No one imagined that in just one night, Mrs. Helena's life would be completely destroyed. A fire that would erase not only her home, but also her memories and her hope. Until that moment, Helena had lived a silent routine, almost invisible to the world. Each morning began with the aroma of fresh coffee, an old newspaper in her wrinkled hands, and the distant sound of birds insisting on announcing the day, as if nothing could disturb her peace. Her house was simple, an old building with wooden windows that creaked in the wind, but for her, every corner held memories, yellowed photos of a past she still held dear, handwritten letters from friends lost to time, objects that told stories of both happy and painful moments. Helena was a woman of habit, and perhaps that was why no one noticed the loneliness that followed her like a silent shadow. She didn't complain. She never asked for help. The outside world seemed distant, almost irrelevant, compared to the life she had built within those walls. But there was something in that tranquility that no one saw, a slight restlessness in her tired eyes, a sigh that escaped her when she looked at the empty armchair where her daughter used to sit on weekend visits. Helena carried within her a mixture of longing and resilience, a silent desire that, despite the absence of the people she loved, she could still find small joys in simple gestures, a blooming garden, a well-brewed coffee, the company of her own memory. That night, everything seemed normal. The wind blew through the cracks in the windows, bringing with it the smell of wet earth and burning leaves from somewhere far away. The distant crackling of the radiator was the only sound filling the silence of the house. Helena was preparing dinner when, without warning, a flash of golden light reflected off the living room walls. At first, she thought it was just a reflection of the stove's flames, but the sensation of heat began to grow rapidly, as if the house itself were breathing fire. In seconds, what had been routine turned into a nightmare. A small, treacherous spark found the fabric of the antique sofa, and before she could react, the flames spread, taking on a life of their own, engulfing what she had called home for so many years. Time seemed to slow down. Each burning object told a story of her life. Each photograph consumed by the fire seemed to carry a piece of her soul with it. The smell of smoke filled her lungs, stinging and suffocating, while the heat threatened to overcome her. But it wasn't just the material loss that devastated Helena. It was the feeling that everything she knew, everything she loved and held so dearly, was disappearing before her eyes. And amidst the destruction, something even deeper took hold. The fear that after the fire, nothing would remain, no memories, no hope, no reason to move on. And then, as if emerging from a film that blends reality and dreams, he appeared. A strange boy with watchful eyes and a heart bigger than anything Helena could have imagined, approached without hesitation. He didn't just bring a blanket or a word of comfort. He'd brought the first spark of hope since the fire had started. What did he want? Why did he care? Who was he? And why did his simple presence seem capable of altering the course of a night marked by disaster? Helena, still shrouded in smoke and despair, felt a silent curiosity grow within her, an unanswered question that would keep her going, even when everything around her seemed lost. In this introduction, the mystery is twofold: the unexpected devastation and the enigmatic presence of the boy, who emerges as a beacon of light in the chaos. Helena's story isn't just about loss. It's about how the unexpected can transform lives, about acts of kindness that emerge when no one else believes anything good can happen. And so, as the fire consumes the past, the narrative prepares us for something even greater, a journey of resilience, empathy, and that will make Helena and those who follow her story rethink the true meaning of home, family, and hope. As the smoke rises and the fire devours the walls that sheltered her life, Helena remains seated on the sidewalk, huddled, yet somehow her eyes fixed on that boy who seems to carry more than just compassion in his gaze. He represents the promise that even on the darkest nights, a simple, unexpected gesture can transform everything. And it is this promise that keeps us going, eager to discover what will happen next, as if every second of the story carries with it the tension of the impossible and the beauty of the unexpected. Helena, 72, lived alone in a small house in the city's old quarter. Each morning began with a quiet ritual, a simple, still warm cup of coffee, accompanied by a few pages of the newspaper that arrived regularly every morning. The aroma of coffee wafted through the kitchen, mingling with the smell of the flowers that grew stubbornly in the garden small. Reminders of the daughter who had moved away years ago, taking with her not only her own presence, but also a part of life that Helena believed would never be complete without her. The neighborhood was quiet, the streets narrow and steeped in history, each brick bearing memories of generations that had passed through. The neighbors, some curious, others indifferent, knew only that Helena was a reserved woman who rarely asked for help and who, despite her age, maintained her home with care and pride. However, behind the tranquil facade lay a silent solitude, an emptiness that Helena tried to fill with small joys. A cat purring beside her, the distant sound of children playing in the street, the wind gently rustling the living room curtains. Each day seemed to follow the same rhythm, as if the world were stuck in a safe, predictable routine. She liked this sense of control, however minimal, because it gave her the illusion that nothing could shake her little universe. But on that kind of night no one could have predicted, Helena's world was about to change irreversibly. As the sky darkened and the first stars appeared, there was something unsettling in the air that no one could possibly notice, except perhaps those who felt more than they saw. A faint, almost imperceptible smell of smoke began to seep through the cracks in the windows. Helena thought it was coming from the old heater, or perhaps a stove forgotten by the neighbors, but the warning instinct kicked in, silent and insistent. She didn't yet know that this small premonition would be the signal that the calm routine she knew was about to disappear. And then, as the wind shifted, bringing sudden heat and the crackle of burning wood, Helena realized something was terribly wrong. The home she had built with such care, which held memories, stories, and moments of happiness and sadness, was beginning to be consumed by flames that seemed to have a life of their own. Every step she took toward the door was accompanied by the crackling of the fire. Every breath carried the fear of the unknown. And amidst the panic, an even more intense feeling emerged. The certainty that her life would never be the same again, that every lost object represented memories that could never be recovered. And it is in this moment of despair, when all seems lost, that Helena's story ceases to be simply about loss. Something unexpected was about to happen, something no one could have predicted, something that would change Not only her night, but the entire trajectory she believed had ended. An encounter that would emerge as a ray of hope amidst the chaos. A simple gesture capable of rekindling a light that the fire had tried to extinguish. The story isn't over yet. The initial tragedy is just the beginning of a journey that blends fear, emotion, and humanity. And it's at this point that we want you to imagine what would happen if, amidst the destruction, someone or something emerged capable of changing everything. Who would be capable of bringing back the hope that seemed lost? The answer is about to be revealed, and what you see next may touch your heart in ways you never imagined. It was late at night when a spark, coming from the living room's old wiring, began to dance across the sofa's fabric. At first it seemed insignificant, almost harmless, a momentary flicker in the corner of her eye. Helena, accustomed to dealing with life's small, unexpected events, still couldn't imagine what that moment would mean, but the distinctive smell of smoke began to fill the air, an aroma that carried with it a portent of disaster. Heart racing, she ran to the sofa, trying to extinguish the spark with trembling hands, desperate to protect what could still be saved. Within seconds, the flame gained strength, as if with a will of its own, turning every object in the room into potential fuel. The sofa, antique and steeped in history, was the first to give way, followed by the curtains, the rug, and the furniture Helena had cared for with such care. She tried to grab some photos, small mementos of her daughter and friends who had passed away, but the dense smoke and intense heat made it impossible to continue. Each rescue attempt became more dangerous, and the feeling of helplessness grew within her, overwhelming. It was as if the fire were devouring not only the house, but every fragment of her life, every memory she believed would last forever. Helena felt her world crumble silently, accompanied only by the furious crackling of the flames. The burned photos, the charred furniture, the objects that seemed to hold laughter, tears, and moments she believed would never disappear. Everything was being consumed. The house that had once been her refuge became a prison of heat and despair, and she realized she could no longer save anything. A profound sense of loss gripped her heart. It wasn't just the material things that were disappearing, but the sense of security, of home, of identity that she had built over decades. Desperate, Helena ran outside, overcome by tears and shock. She sat on the sidewalk, enveloped in ash that seemed to mix with her tears, unsure of where to look or what to do. Each breath was filled with sadness and disbelief, a mixture of despair and resignation that only those who have lost everything can understand. The cold of the night contrasted with the infernal heat that still spread behind her, and for a moment Helena felt completely alone in the world, as if everything she knew had been erased in the blink of an eye. And it was precisely in that moment of utter vulnerability that he appeared. A seemingly ordinary boy, whom she had never seen before, approached with careful but determined steps. His eyes shone with genuine concern, an intensity that seemed to see beyond the flames and smoke, straight to Helena's heart. He said nothing immediately. He simply extended his hand, offering something that in that moment was more precious than any lost object: presence, care, and humanity. The boy's appearance brought with it a mixture of curiosity and hope. Who was he? Why was he there at such a devastating moment? How could someone unknown offer comfort when everything she knew had been destroyed, Helena felt a different spark ignite within her, a sense that, despite the tragedy, perhaps there was still a chance to start over. And it's precisely at this point that the story captivates us. The unexpected encounter, the kindness, emerging from nowhere, makes us want to know what comes next. What will this boy do for Helena? How much can this simple gesture change her life? What seemed like just a night of disaster begins to turn into something no one could have predicted. As the fire still burns in the background and the smoke mingles with the silent night, Helena feels she is about to discover something greater, something that goes far beyond loss, something capable of rekindling the hope that seemed to have vanished forever. The boy, without hesitation, approached Helena with firm yet delicate steps, as if aware that every movement could make a difference. In his hands he held a simple blanket, not luxurious, but which in that moment held the value of a hug, capable of warming not only Helena's body, but also her shattered heart. As he wrapped her in the blanket, he said nothing, simply offering companionship, something Helena, amidst the smoke, ash, and despair, had never expected. A silent gesture, but that one carried a quiet, transformative power. She looked at the boy, her eyes brimming with tears and surprise. Who was he? Where had he come from so much courage to approach a stranger at such a dangerous time? And more importantly, how could someone so young convey so much empathy, so much humanity, without expecting anything in return? Helena felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a thread of hope, faint but real, emerging amidst the devastation that threatened to engulf everything around her. The boy, with a simple gesture, invited her to his house. At first, Helena hesitated, insecure and suspicious, but the warmth emanating from that childlike gaze seemed to reassure her that, despite everything, she wouldn't be alone. Following that boy meant leaving behind the home she loved, which had now become nothing but ashes and smoke. It meant trusting the unexpected, allowing someone unknown to enter her world and perhaps showing her that there were still people capable. Offering shelter not only physically, but emotionally. Upon arriving at the boy's home, Helena was greeted by his parents with a naturalness that left her speechless. There was no judgment, no awkward curiosity or pitying glances. There was only welcome, warmth, and a sincerity that seemed to touch her soul directly. She felt part of something bigger, if only for a few moments. Each gesture, each word of comfort seemed to slowly rebuild something the fire had tried to destroy. Helena's belief that it was still possible to start over, that there was still goodness in the world, that life could go on despite the loss. In that simple yet humane gesture, Helena realized that true wealth wasn't found in the things the fire had taken. It wasn't the furniture, the objects, or even the old photos that would define her life from then on. What mattered now was the love and solidarity that emerged unexpectedly, capable of replacing what seemed irretrievable. She understood that sometimes an act of generosity from a stranger can bridge despair and hope between loneliness and a sense of belonging. As she settled into her new temporary home, surrounded by people who welcomed her as if she were family, Helena felt a silent transformation within herself. The pain was still there, the burned memories still stung, but the prospect of rebuilding her own life began to take shape before her eyes. Every smile, every welcoming word, every gesture of care from the boy and his parents was like a brick placed on the rubble of her old life. And it's at this point that the story captivates us. The catastrophic loss has given way to a small glimmer of hope, but questions still linger. How will Helena rebuild her life from there? What impact will that simple yet profound gesture have on her future? Who could have imagined that amidst tragedy, an encounter with a stranger could generate something so powerful? What seemed like a moment of solidarity became the promise of a new beginning. And it's precisely this thread of hope that keeps the hearts of those who follow the story beating, eager for the next chapter. Sometimes the world seems to abandon us in our darkest moments. When we think all is lost, that life no longer holds any good surprises, it's as if the darkness becomes endless, consuming not only our possessions but also our faith in humanity. Helena felt this firsthand. The fire not only took her home but seemed to have erased every happy memory, every shred of security she had built over decades. Sitting on the sidewalk, shrouded in ash and tears, the weight of loneliness and despair seemed unbearable. But then, amidst all the destruction, something no one could have predicted emerged. The presence of an unknown boy, a simple gesture of kindness that changed the course of her life. He didn't bring material wealth, nor did he offer magical solutions to erase pain or restore lost objects. He brought something even more valuable: attention, care, and humanity. And it was precisely this unexpected gesture that rekindled the flame of hope within Helena. The life that seemed to have disappeared began to rebuild itself not with possessions, but with love, solidarity, and human connection. Helena's experience reminds us that true wealth lies not in the things we possess, but in the people who show up when we least expect it. Fire can destroy walls, furniture, photos, and mementos, but it cannot destroy someone's ability to offer warmth, compassion, and emotional shelter to another human being. Helena learned that even when all seems lost, there is still the possibility of rebuilding one's life, and that rebuilding often begins with a simple act of kindness. We may never know the full impact such a small gesture can have. It might be just a blanket, a hug, or a word of comfort, but for someone in the depths of despair, it can mean everything. An hug, or a word of comfort, but for someone in the depths of despair, transformed her entire perspective on the world. Helena experienced this firsthand, creates invisible an unexpected act that not only saves inspire, and sometimes change destinies. It reminds us that even in the most difficult moments, we can be the light that illuminates another person's path, even if only for a moment. And this is exactly the lesson we can apply to our own lives. We all have the opportunity to offer something meaningful, even if small, to someone in need. A smile, a word of encouragement, a gesture of things that seem simple to us can be transformative for those facing their own personal fires. Choosing to act with humanity, even when the world seems cold and indifferent, is the purest form of connection with others. Now we want to hear from you. When was the last time an unexpected act of kindness changed your day or your life? Or have you ever been the person who offered hope to someone in a difficult time? Share your story in the comments, inspire others, and help spread this wave of empathy and solidarity. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive more moving stories that show how humanity and hope can emerge in the most unexpected moments. Because just as Helena discovered, we all have the power to be the light in someone's darkness.